Grace and peace to you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. In a moment, I'm going to be continuing with the crucifixion of Jesus. But first, I put all the videos from the series into a podcast on YouTube, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to get it to you. And the reason I did this was so that you have, I don't know how it works yet, but you're going to have all the videos in one shot. So this way you have them when you want to get caught up. You could just go right down to the video in the podcast rather than having to, I think, search for them on my page. So anyway, I'm trying to make it a little bit more convenient. So I was going to continue into John chapter 19 today, but what I want to do is I want to just take a small detour into Luke's gospel because he has a little bit more of an account during the crucifixion. Remember, the crucifixion, I told you, is the single most significant event in human history. Never before has a man died, buried, and then rose again from the dead. It's never happened before then, and it's never happened since. And that is exclusively to Jesus. And the crucifixion and the resurrection proves that Jesus is who he says he is. And the reason being is because it's the crucifixion and the resurrection that separates Christianity from all religions in the world. We have a person that we worship, and that's Jesus. And it's through what he did, and that's what makes Christianity separate from the rest, and that's what makes this event so important. And like I said, the single most important event in in all of history. Okay, so the reason I want to look at something at the other Gospels is because, remember, John doesn't go into great detail on the crucifixion. And the reason being is because he wrote his Gospel many years after the other Gospels were written. And he made the assumption, he said, listen, he's writing to certain people, and he goes, look, you've already read and heard the other accounts from the other disciples and everybody else who was there. I want to present Jesus to you from my perspective, in a different perspective, so I don't need to go into all this detail. You already know the story. So that's why we have the Gospels. We have the three other Gospels, so that we can read the accounts apart from John's. So we're going to be looking in Luke's here. And when I get done reading this, I'm going to concentrate on the two thieves, and we know that there were two thieves hanging with Jesus. We know Jesus was in the middle, and there were thieves on either side of him. We know they died with him. So here we go. I'm going to read Luke chapter 23, verses 32 to 36. Two other men, both criminals, were led out with him to be executed. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him there along with the criminals, one on his right, the other on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. The people stood watching, and the rulers even sneered at him. They said, "He saved others, let him save himself if he's God's Messiah, the chosen one." The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine and vinegar and said, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was a written notice above him which read, "This is the king of the Jews." One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God, since you are under the same sentence? We are being punished justly for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Okay, so Jesus is being hung on the cross. He's getting nails driven into his wrists, driven into his feet. He's suspended on a cross up in the air. His body is going to go through a brutal death. There's no question about it. He knows it. He's already in tremendous amounts of pain that's probably making him want to be close to passing out. But yet, he speaks. He says, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." Now, he could have been talking directly about the people that were crucifying him, but more likely he was talking about all of humanity. Jesus came here for a purpose, and that was to relay God's message of salvation. That is to let people know that no matter how hard they try, no matter what they do, they cannot make themselves right with God, that their sin has to be held accountable. And the only way that it was going to be getting done is that if he did it himself, if God did it himself, and he did it in the person of Jesus Christ. That was Jesus's message. It was to let us know that he was there to take care of this for us. So he looks down at the people and he looks to his father and he says, "Forgive them, they don't know what they're doing." And that's important for us when people sin against us. When somebody does wrong to us, it's very, very important that we understand and that we have the same heart that Jesus had. We have to know that the people that are hurting us don't know what they're doing. I could tell you right now, there are still people that hurt me and I still get angry at them, but I also kind of realize, listen, I'm in it too. I'm growing. I'm growing too. I'm starting to realize, you know what? They don't know what they're doing. I look at the people that hurt me in my past and I said, you know what? They didn't know what they were doing. Okay, so God looks at me like that. I have to look at them like that. And that's what Jesus was doing. He was looking at humanity and saying, they don't know what they're doing. Please forgive them. Then you have the two thieves. You have one on his left who was going through the same torturous, brutal death that Jesus was going through. He was hearing the same insults hurled. He saw what was going on. He heard Jesus offer forgiveness to what he might have thought was just the people there. Nevertheless, he heard Jesus say it. He heard Jesus' heart going through the same thing he was going through. Yet this man still hurled insults at Jesus. He did not accept God's gift of salvation. He rejected God on that cross. At that moment in time, he was beginning his eternity in torturous separation from God. The pain that he was going through on the cross was mild compared to what he was going on, what he was going to be going through on the for you all of eternity. I'm sorry, something popped up on my screen. Um, Secondly, you have the other man, the other thief. He's on the right. He hears Jesus talk about forgiveness. He hears Jesus's, I guess you want to say, contrite heart. While he's going through the same thing, they're all going through the same pain. Yet this man hears Jesus and hears what he's doing. He knew who Jesus was. He had heard about him. It wasn't like he was under a rock or anything. Everybody knew Jesus was. And this man finally says, "You know what? This guy probably is who he says he is. I'm going to trust him." And he turned to Jesus and he asked Jesus, basically, he said, "Jesus, I'm going to take a shot at this. I think you are who you say you are. Will you please take me with you to your kingdom?" And at that moment, Jesus said, "Yeah, you're coming with me." And that's when that man began his eternity in the kingdom of heaven in paradise. The pain that he was going to go through for the rest of that crucifixion and what's going to transpire in a little while to make sure he's dead, that was going to be the last pain he was going to suffer because he was going to paradise. One man was suffering the least pain he was ever going to suffer by being on that cross. Another man was suffering the last pain he was ever going to endure. That's the difference. When we reject God, we suffer pain. When we accept God, we receive paradise. That's the difference. That's what I want you to see here. Next week, we're going to continue with John chapter 19, and we're going to look at Jesus buried. Have a good week.